Up next is the Implementing an Influencer Tour panel. I'm going to invite Jancey Hall to the stage. Jancey is the program manager for Kansas Soybean Commission. She's a graduate of Kansas State University, and part of her role is working with bloggers, dietitians, and other influencers and connecting them to farmers and the agriculture story. She's taken 10 bus trips to farms, from niche hog operations to large-scale dairies and everything in between. Please help me in welcoming Jancey.
Awesome. Good afternoon. I'm Jancey, and I have the privilege of working on behalf of Kansas soybean farmers. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our programs. For the past 3 years, we've had the opportunity, thankful to USB, to partner with the Kansas Farm Bureau and bringing influencers to farms. And so I'm going to tell a little bit specifically about our influencer tours, and then we're going to bring up a panel to discuss a little bit more. So one of our programs is the Farm Food Tour. It's a blogger-focused tour where we're taking bloggers on a bus trip basically across Kansas for 3 days. We're visiting various farms and seeing all parts of the ag industry. We have up to 10 bloggers on these tours, and we've met them in a variety of means. So we've met them at blogger conferences, blogger groups, and we have friends that have connected us with other bloggers throughout the industry. Our primary goal is just to get these influencers on the farm and meeting farmers, talking to the farmer, actually seeing, literally getting in the field, talking about their operations, and kind of dispelling some of those myths and preconceived notions that they may have. With this tour, we try and visit across the whole ag industry, obviously focusing on animal agriculture. Quite frankly, this tour can be a little bit scary because we're asking these influencers to share on social media as we go. And we're also asking them to write a wrap-up post about their experience. So through that, you never quite know what they're going to say, but we want them to share their voice, their authentic voice, because we feel like that's what has influences within their niche. They've built followings on their own, so we want to ensure that keeps that authentic voice that they have. And so we don't try and control the messages or anything. But we do, the one thing we do is that we pick good farmers to visit. So we choose farmers that are willing to be very transparent and open about their operations. Quite frankly, you want farmers that are willing to tell a story and are good storytellers and are willing to talk about anything and everything. The other key thing is we feed people well. We make sure that my goal is that when people get on the bus, they leave full and very happy with the food that they had on the tour, because happy people will share more positive things. Another tour that we have is our Real Pig Farming Tour, in which Soybeans partners with Kansas Pork. Beans make bacon. We focus on dietitians for this tour, and we take dietitians to Fair Oaks Farms in Indiana, and the whole goal of this tour is to see how pigs are raised indoors. Once again, we've met these dietitians through a variety of means. Jody at Kansas Pork is really awesome at meeting dietitians at blogger conferences and building those relationships, and we also have a lot of word of mouth of getting those dietitians on board. The dietitians earlier talked about they're always looking for continuing education, they're always wanting to learn, and we offer continuing education credits for this tour to make it worth their while. We do visit a couple other farms on the way. The main thing with both of these tours is that we're connecting over the love of food. Everybody loves to eat, especially these people. It's great to connect over that, and it builds relationships. And through that, we've found that it's really easy for people to love farmers. I am not a farmer. I love my farmers, and I work on behalf of them. And it's really easy to trust farmers. That's something that's continually said, is that farmer trust is very easy. And so we build a relationship based on those things. And because of that, people ask us hard questions. Somebody once said that if people ask you the really hard questions, it means that they trust you. And so that's something that we found. We have people asking us, okay, now we know the basic things. How exactly is a GMO created? What exactly do hormones do, and what impact do they have? And so Farm Food Tour 2.0 was launched on that, where we actually bring our dietitians and our bloggers together, and Kansas Pork is involved with this as well. And we take them, we focus on the science, so we visit agribusinesses. For this tour, we visit a variety of things, and our three major focuses are antibiotics, hormones, and GMOs. We actually start our tour in Kansas City. We're in the Animal Health Corridor, and we visited Elanco Animal Health this year, and it was perfect timing. They had just launched their Truth About Food campaign. So antibiotics, hormones, had a great morning with them discussing those things and also sharing over lunch. From there we go to Monsanto in St. Louis, where we visit their research facility. Janet Person, who's the online engagement director for Monsanto, has been an incredible resource for us. When we're at their facility, she just opens all the doors for us. We take a full tour, we have lunch, she brings in experts from throughout the company, and we visit on different things from health and nutrition to different farmers that she brings in. We also, this year, were able to visit with their head bee guys, so we talked pollinators, and so that's been a really hot topic lately. The main thing with both of those stops is that, once again, keeping that transparency, keeping that all questions are welcome onto the table. Bring anything you want. We're going to find answers for you. If not, we can connect you with somebody who knows. Another stop we have on this tour is Central Missouri Meat and Sausage. So they're able to see, it's a local meat locker, and they're able to see from the kill floor to the processing side. We don't actually see the slaughter process, but they're able to walk through that process and see the whole thing. We also send them home with some of that meat that was produced there, so that's always cool. One of the things with this tour is that we want to survey and we want to ensure that we're being impactful and that we're investing dollars wisely. So when people get on the bus, I give them a survey. And when they get off the bus, I also give them a survey to see if that needle's moving. We're investing checkoff dollars into these programs, and I want to ensure that they're being used wisely and we're moving the needle. It also helps us to see maybe we need to fix our programs or maybe we need to focus on something else. So over the past 3 years, we've had 56 different people on our buses. So with that, we have bloggers that are both big and small. We have those that are foodies, we have fashion-focused bloggers, we have all sorts of aspects. And the really cool thing about that is they all have a vested interest in this for a different reason, and they all reach different niches. And we think that adds a lot of value. We've had dietitians on board, and I think they talked a little bit earlier, they care about the science, right? Our bloggers tend to care more about the social issues first, and then the science. So for us, the goal of these tours is not to get back to Kansas City and baptize everybody because everybody thinks the same thing about food and it's great. Food choices are incredible, and that's something that's really cool in America, that we have all these awesome choices to make. But we do want to ensure that our farmers have the freedom to farm in the best way that's possible for their farm. We want to ensure that their farm is sustainable now and into the future. This is my friend Dana, and we really think that these tours have a rippling effect. Dana is definitely what you would consider a food elitist. So she's all organic, pasture raised, she knows her farmers, she makes yogurt with raw milk. So she's we have very different food philosophies. But through this tour, Dana and I became friends. And so we're on a bus for 3 days. You either hate somebody once you get off the bus, or you love them. And so luckily, I tend to love all my people, so it's been great. But Dana and I had become friends over the 2 days, and that morning of the third day, we were visiting a large-scale dairy farm. And I noticed that Dana was really nervous. She just looked very anxious, not talking a whole lot, and I wasn't sure what was going on, so I was like, I'm going to stick a little bit close. And the dairy people talked a lot about that, but she believed all those things. So like dairy cows, perception is reality. So she thought that dairy cows were stuck in those things with the bars next to their heads and couldn't move, couldn't walk around. They were there all day. It was really dirty, gross. Calves were ripped away from their moms. They weren't given very good care. And it was really cool to watch on this farm as her reality was completely altered. So all those things melted away. She became relaxed again. She was talking, taking pictures, and she even made the comment on the bus afterwards that she would buy organic yogurt in a grocery store. That's huge for her, right? So it doesn't seem huge for me, who bring it on. But for her, that's a big deal. And so now she gets into furious discussions at Whole Foods with staff and with fellow shoppers. And she continually posts about farmers just because she feels that she can be part of that voice, and she reaches markets that we never could. Quite frankly, Dana's an extreme person that's been on our bus, but we have a lot of Danas now. We have people that we can't tell the rippling impact that one of our dietitians meeting with their clients that then talks to their family and friends about it. How do you measure those ripples? It's really hard, but the ways we've seen the impact happen has been very cool. So we really love our 3-day tours. We find that they have a lot of value, and they've done a lot of cool things. If you want to do a 3-day tour, or if you want to implement anything like that, Meagan, Cramer, and I, we've developed, primarily Meagan, has developed a how-to booklet we would love to send you, covering our financials, our agendas, our surveys, all the ins and outs. And I'm going to put our contact information up here in just a minute. We'd love to send that to you, and if you want to do that, we think they hold a lot of value. However, if you are doing something already, awesome. Keep doing it. How do you engage and connect with more people? Think about that. The other thing, if you're not doing anything, it's not hard to start. Whether it's just having people over to pick sweet corn on your farm or make a meal together, whatever it may be, stepping out and engaging with people has been something that is so valuable. We focus on bloggers and dietitians, but there are so many influencer groups out there that add value to our industry. So with that, I'm going to invite these ladies on stage, and I'm going to briefly introduce them as they're coming up. We have Meagan Cramer, who's the director. I'll come up. You got it. Who's our Director of Communications and Marketing for Kansas Farm Bureau, and she's the brainchild behind the Farm Food Tour. We also have Heidari, who's the Executive Director for Kansas Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and she's been on all 3 of our tours. Stacey Forshee is a farmer, and she's on the Kansas Farm Bureau Board of Directors, and she's been on both of our farm food tours. We just got back from Monsanto a couple weeks ago. LaVell Winsor is a farmer, and she has been on our farm food tour around Kansas. And with that, I'm going to leave this up, so if you want our contact information or you have questions, we'd love to send you the how-to booklet. And
all right, thanks, Jancey. So my favorite part of panel discussions is getting to ask questions. So we're going to open this up. So start formulating your questions if you want to pick our brains about how we did it or what they learned. So LaVell, will you kick it off by just kind of giving us a brief introduction of yourself, if Jancey missed anything important?
Sure. So my name is LaVell Winsor, and I live on a third-generation family farm. We actually farm just about 60 miles west of Kansas City. So we're located between Topeka, which is the capital of Kansas, and Lawrence, which is where the University of Kansas is at. So we're around a pretty urban population where we farm. And we primarily raise corn and soybeans, mostly GMO, some wheat. And then my brother-in-law and father-in-law also have cattle.
Abby?
Well, my name is Heidari, and I am a registered dietitian nutritionist. As Jancey said, I work with the Kansas Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. So as Amber said, she was their president this last year. I am the executive director, so I help run the board of 25 to 30 dietitians that are on our board. I also work as a consultant dietitian in a number of different settings. That's what I'm currently doing. I work with the Greater Kansas City YMCA. I teach some weight management program classes with them. I also just recently in March took on a position with the Kansas Beef Council consulting and helping them with their nutrition education program. Past work experience, I actually was a retail dietitian with Hy-Vee. It's a very large grocery store chain here in the U.S. that I think Leah mentioned. It has a dietitian in every single store with over 200 stores. We had hired my second when I was leaving, so they definitely do have 2 dietitians in a lot of stores. I also have some clinical background, so I kind of have my hand in a lot of different baskets. My full-time job is being a mom with 3 awesome kids, so I can say that definitely influences my decisions at the grocery store as a consumer as well. So.
Stacey.
Sorry. That's all right. Okay. Waste our time getting the mic out here. My name is Stacey Forshee. My husband and I farm about 3 hours west of here in Cloud County. And I farm right alongside of him. We grow mainly GMO, soybeans and corn, a little bit of wheat, and then we have 500 mama cows that we're just finally getting done calving. So we're very diversified. My other hat on this tour was I sit on the board of directors for my state farm bureau, Kansas Farm Bureau. So we invest a lot of money and time into these tours as well. And so I kind of had 2 hats on. I was able to see firsthand what kind of value these tours really did hold.
All right. So tell us, each of you, what was the most surprising takeaway that you experienced from being on the farm tour? So I'll let whoever wants to tackle that one first.
I'll start. I think the most surprising thing that I learned was how, I mean, in our case, they were all women, but how, how these people took 3 days out of their children's lives, out of their, being families, being on their jobs, to come and learn about agriculture. And it's just very overwhelming to realize how what we do on our farms affect their everyday. And that's really something that I completely didn't, of course farmers feed the world, but you have dietitians that have clients that rely on their guidance and the information that they have, and for them to be so interested and just so invested in what we do every day and want to learn from the experts was something that I really took away as a huge thing for me.
I would say is mine working? I think, okay. I would say the thing that I probably was the most surprised about is every single tour had a different aspect to it. Going to Monsanto, or the tour that was from Kansas City to Monsanto, obviously science was... Am I on? No. I'll just use this. Hello? Can you guys hear me in the back? All right. Okay, so as I was saying, every tour was a little different. It was like each of the 3 tours that these ladies put together was a little bit of a piece of a puzzle that at the very end it all fit together and it made so much sense. So each tour was different. Going to Monsanto, obviously science was the biggest takeaway, but the funny thing is it wasn't Monsanto that the science really hit me. It was going to Mashoff and hearing how much that family invested into researching what to feed their animals at each stage of every point of their life. The science that just learning from Corey at Central Missouri Meat about what happens when a pasture-raised pig is actually slaughtered, and the differences and the different things he has to do at the slaughterhouse to make sure that everything's sanitary and food secure. That's a really interesting point that I would have never known as a dietitian, especially working in the grocery store. You get so many questions about, well, the pasture-raised pork is so much better. I'm going to buy that for my family. Yes, it's more expensive, but I can afford it. Now, personally, I don't think I would ever feed my children pasture-raised pork ever again after hearing some of the stories that were out there. So I think it's just interesting and something that you would never hear about or know about being so far removed from farming as I am. I don't have any family that are farmers, so. That's yours working.
Okay. I think it is.
Yep.
Okay. So I guess one of the most surprising things to me was, the genuine concern that the folks that were with us had about their food. And so there was a time where I would have been kind of offended maybe by some of the questions that were asked. And they really were not asking those to offend us in any ways. It was just the perception. Every single person in the interactions that I had is they had researched many of these topics that they had concerns on, and they were just genuinely concerned. Now, what was really interesting, though, is after the experience of being there and being able to talk firsthand with the farmer of whichever place it was in the tour, it was just amazing how the comfort level just really seemed to improve with, okay, now I understand why a rancher might use antibiotics. Now I understand why a farmer might use insecticide on their crops. And I'm comfortable with that it's not dousing. It's a very small amount. So just being able to and willing to have those hard conversations, and they were just very receptive to hearing why we might do those things. So that was very, very reassuring.
Awesome. Any questions? Wanda.
Okay, I've got actually a 2-part question.
Okay.
So as organizers of the tour, and you just had your 3rd one, what's the biggest thing you learned from the first one to the third one?
Good one.
Is organizing. And then the second part is what's next. So I'm going to assume you're going to do a fourth. So what are you going to do better, bigger, whatever?
So I'll answer, and then maybe Jancey, if you have other thoughts. So we were actually pretty lucky when we put the first one on. We have not changed a whole lot. The things we have changed is adding those second steps, because some of the first people were like, wow, so I totally get that. Now, what about GMOs or antibiotics? And we thought, wow, okay, so let's go to Monsanto. Let's dig into these. So we've added those pieces. But picking really good farmers that can tell the story and aren't going to be offended if somebody asks a question that's offensive, and can explain it in terms that non-farm people will understand is super, super important. What's next? So we want to kind of continue that education, so we're going to plan something where they all come back for a social time. But then also invite Dr. Thompson from the vet school to again, dig into the questions they have. So yeah, we're definitely going to continue. We see value in that, and it's important to our organizations.
I think one of the things is, so this past tour we had a chef on the bus for the first time, so that was pretty cool, but continuing to look for those influencers, there's always more people to reach out to, so continuing to build those relationships, but continuing to foster the ones you already have. I mean, when you're on a bus with somebody for 3 days, you become friends. If not, it's kind of painful. And so we continue. I want to stay up to date on these people's lives. I didn't know, I knew LaVell a little bit, but I didn't know either of these gals before I got on, and now I look for updates about their lives. I love seeing them and catching up with them. So we continue to foster those relationships just because I personally want to. We also have Facebook groups that we use, and we're trying to utilize those for better engagement and just talking about key issues. I think one of our bloggers, whenever the GMO salmon fish came out, salmon, whatever. Arctic.
Oh no, that's the apple.
Yeah, the fish. We were the first people she turned to before she talked anywhere else. And so I think continuing to be that group, I think we need to continue to evolve and change and improve upon things, but figure out what we're doing good and continue to work on that. Because if you don't change, it's not a good thing, right? And so we want to continue just to work to improve. So.
Hi, my name is Michael Stebbins, and I'm with GMO Answers. So obviously my focus is on the GMO part of the tour. First of all, it was you probably mean the aquabounding salmon?
Yes,
which is, you say it did whenever it came out. I mean, it's been in the works for 20 years, and it's kind of been approved, but not really, so that's a whole long conversation. But I would love to know how the conversation about GMOs went, as well as if it differed any from the other two parts of the conversation, and what the metrics were pre and post tour in terms of their opinions about the GMO issue. Thank you.
I know one thing they did on my farm, and I think maybe on LaVell's too. I didn't make it to hers because, they dropped me off at home. But anyway, on my farm, we had a center pivot that was planted to GMO soybeans, and I still remember this so vividly because we walked out into our field and the beans were green. I took a pod and cracked them open and started eating them, and they were like, "What? You can eat those?" I'm like, "Yeah." It's like they're perfectly good. Now, some did try them, but some were like, nope, not going to do that. This was day one, and so we talked about, LaVell talked too in my field about why we plant them and what benefits there are, and, they had not been sprayed since they had, since the plants had gone up, for us. And so, there was just a lot of really good conversation. Did we change everybody's mind? No. But they absolutely had a better respect and better understanding for, and I know Dana is one of them that Jancey talked about. I was just on a GMO panel with her last fall, and she said, I respect my farmers, but I still need more information. And she's gone through all of it. But she's not going to talk bad about what we do because she respects why we plant them. She still chooses not to eat them, but I like her a lot, and we're going to continue the conversation.
And so on the third day of the tour, the last stop that we had was at one of our farms, because we're just 60 miles away from Kansas City, which is where the bus, where everybody's cars were at. And quite honestly, I was pretty nervous about that, because I knew that the stop at our farm was going to be between them and getting home after 3 days of being gone. And what we did, that was during fall harvest, and so what we did is we took the bus off on a dirt road, and we ended up at a field where we had 2 combines harvesting corn, and the grain cart was running, and then we had a flatbed set up, and Jancey had supper catered out to our field, and we ate supper around the field. They got to see what combines look like. We talked about GMOs and some of the other issues around crop farming, and the conversation was just great. I mean, and I was really worried that people were probably very anxious to get gone, but I didn't really feel that way. And there was just great conversation and continued questions for a while. So it went well. I don't know if everybody changed their mind, if they had one opinion and not, but they were very receptive to hearing why we use that technology on our farm.
Just real briefly on our surveys, there's so much more we could do with them, and I know that, but they're very basic, a 5-point scale. This data up there is over the 3 years. Our most recent tour, that was like 2 weeks ago, that's not factored into this, but that's overall across the tours. However, there's a lot more to grow. At the end of the day, like I said, we don't necessarily want to baptize them into our way of thinking, but we want them to understand that there's choices, and that's an incredible thing. So I would be happy to send you all the survey data I have. I love that stuff. I love crunching those numbers. So chat with me after. I'd love to talk with you.
I would say it was really interesting. Being a dietitian, I'm very much interested in the science behind everything, but learning more from the organic chemists and the microbiologists. There's so many researchers at Monsanto. I mean, they are able to hire the best individuals that are some of the smartest individuals in the entire world and bring them here to do all that research. But just understanding that, number one, we've been doing DNA modification of foods throughout the history of our times. We've been constantly doing that, and we also do that with organic foods using chemicals and radiation. So I think it's just interesting to know the science behind it and just realize that we as humans have become really good at using our technology to do things simpler and easier. I mean, that's all there is to it. At the end of the day, my patients and clients, they have the choice, because they live in the United States, to choose what they want to and to choose what will work best for their budget. And I'm here to direct them in that way. But as far as the research, as understood and there, right now there's nothing that proves GMOs or anything less comparable to non-GMOs when it comes to the nutritional value. So I'm going to direct my clients towards what works best for them and their budgets and their thinking and way of life. And I hope most dietitians will be doing the same, because when it comes to ethics, we are supposed to stand behind the science. So.
Hi, Sammy from Midwest Dairy Association, local dairy checkoff. My question is, I'll just put it out there, related to compensation, just because we've done some tours too. So I was wondering if you could comment on that. I know there's probably lots of different models. Maybe it's more that it sounds like you provide a great experience that in and of itself is what brings people to dedicate 3 days, or is there some specific compensation where then maybe that factors into what they disclose when they're talking about it in social?
That's a great question. So from the beginning, when we work with bloggers, we tell them that we will pay them $100 per day plus all their travel expenses and food, but they are required to do social media activity every day and then finish up with a blog post. We don't ask to see the blog post before it goes out there. Now, we'll read it, and if there's something really wrong, we'll say, could you fix that? And they've always done that. But we don't have any control over what they put out after that. For the dietitians, we offer them CEU credits and also payment, not as much as the bloggers. So yes, we do pay them. We figure they're taking time out, they're working for us, so yes, we do pay them.
Hi,
Hi, Alex Ambrius with Vivaic. We've got a couple clients that do things similar to this, and so I'm interested to hear, I'm assuming you guys do applications.
Yes.
What are a couple things that you're looking for when it comes to those applicants?
So the application that we have is very simple. It says, tell us who you are, give us a little bit of description of your blog and your following, tell us why you think you would be a good fit for this tour, what questions you have, and then are you available on these dates? Is that about it? And we put that how-to tour booklet together, and we've got all that information, which I can send to you too, but it's very basic, but we want to have them explain to us why we should select them and what they'll bring to us.
Sure. So is there any key things you're looking for, like something that I should remove, or just okay, impress you, if you want to learn more?
Yeah, so we look at, so Jancey said we look at their following. We've taken big and small. We've told a few people, come back in a couple years, maybe grow your following a little bit. So we kind of look to see, does this fit make sense? Is this somebody that we think would make sense to do this? One thing that we've never had a male blogger come on the tour. So I think we're going to try to so that will make an interesting dynamic on the bus. So that's one thing that we might do different next time. So really it's just us sitting down and saying what makes sense, who do we want on the tour. Other questions? All right. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Kate. I'm a veterinarian. I have a question about the antibiotics. And so I'm guessing that the positive trend you saw in antibiotics were that people now have a better understanding of why antibiotics are used and perhaps how they are applied to individual animals in the case of cattle or perhaps used in animal agriculture. But I guess my question is more on, did you not only ask, are they more comfortable with antibiotics being used by farmers or by veterinarians in a judicious manner, but also are they comfortable with eating protein from an animal that's had antibiotics? Because we find as veterinarians that most people say, yeah, I trust you. You are the veterinarian, you can apply antibiotics, but at the end of the day, I want to buy that meat that is still raised without antibiotics. So I'm just curious how you all dealt with that.
Our questions are very basic. There's a lot more I would love to do with the surveys, but at the end of the day, I want them to be friendly for the people on the bus. They're filling them out on the bus. There's so much more we can do. I think overall, it's kind of still the same. The people so my Dana's of the world, she's an easy example to use since we talked about her. She's still going to look for that antibiotic-free. But some of them, yes, are more comfortable, and they make comments on my survey and stuff like that. So I have a lot of comments that I go through and see, so I know exactly what they're feeling and what that says. Overall, they're more comfortable with them being used and even eating that protein that's had antibiotics, because they're like, oh, yeah, I use antibiotics for my kids when they're sick, so that makes sense, and they understand the withdrawal and whatnot. So overall, I think they're more comfortable.
One thing I would say kind of more as a consumer is I had no idea that it was against the law for poultry to not be given hormones, and this is not antibiotics, but hormones or pork. So that's just something that as a consumer I don't know. And I worked in a grocery store for 8 years and still did not know that. So the message isn't out there enough that all consumers realize what the laws are. So that's something that I think is really important to understand, as we still have a large job to do when it comes to letting people know just what the facts are.
Well, and not only did they see like a cow-calf operation similar to like mine, it was the Sawyers that we went to, but they also saw, a feedlot, and they, the same care that the Sawyers were giving their animals was the same care that the feedlot was giving their animals as far as antibiotic use and that kind of thing. So, that was really huge in a lot of these folks' eyes, because I know when we were at the feedlot, they were just like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I mean, it is so clean. It is so, they are just caring for them so well. It was just a really huge thing, I think, for the beef industry.
Another thing that we talked about was hormones, and so the Sawyers, like Stacey, they actually showed them what it was, and they were like, that's all it is. They had in this mind that it was like this big thing, And so I think just actually seeing it, like, oh, okay, so that's all it is, was like mind-blowing for a lot of the people. Other questions? Yep.
So where would have been the right place to insert that knowledge about the hormones?
I think he's talking to Abby.
At what point in your education or your past, or as a somebody who markets?
That's a very good question. So one thing that I'll reemphasize from what Leah and Amber said this morning is dietitians are not the experts in food and ag, which is really unfortunate. And working in Kansas, I've talked a lot with the K-State University about, hey, what can our Student Dietetic Association maybe doing with our agricultural department there at K-State, because I never, ever, I'm a K-State grad, never did anything being in the dietetics department there with the agricultural kids. And I think that's something that could easily be implemented where both of those groups of students are working together a little bit more, so that dietitians are coming out at least having a little bit more minor understanding of what goes into the production. I don't know if it's just not out in the media enough. Working in the grocery stores, there's so many conflicting labels. You feel like you're constantly having to relearn what each label means because they're not consistent, and there's so many different ones. The animal humane certification that they were talking about, one question I would want to know is that on products in the grocery store? Because I've never seen that certification anywhere in my grocery stores.
Well, the dilemma is if you put it there, then it implies that somebody is using them. So, we all have to do it, or we all have to educate everybody some other way,
And that myself, as a dietitian who now knows some of these facts, and I feel like I understand these facts better, I never understood that humans could give pigs diseases. I had no idea that they were susceptible to that. So that's something I learned when we went up to Fair Oaks Farm, I believe was the name of it, in Indiana. Those little facts that you all think you know, or you do know, and it's just common sense to you, as a consumer, we're not aware of it. And it's just a lot of information we still need to make sure we're consistently getting out. As a dietitian, I have a hard time realizing that when I'm talking carbohydrates and rattling off, numbers and this many grams are in that slice of bread, and I know all this, I forget that that's not common knowledge. And I think as producers, just remember that your common knowledge is not the consumer's common knowledge. And keep saying those little phrases that you know really well in your minds, but they're just not out there quite for the consumers yet. That would be my suggestion.
So to share another story just about how far removed consumers are, we went to a dairy and one of the bloggers had in her mind created this story that cows are given hormones to milk all the time because she had a friend who adopted a baby and wanted to breastfeed that baby, so she took hormones so she could do that. So to her, that meant that's what happens on dairy farms. And she created this story in her head, and it was her truth. So getting her on the farm, she was like, wow, I was totally wrong. And she didn't, so that has not been, I've never seen that out there. Like, she created that story in her mind. And so just getting on a dairy farm, she learned something pretty profound that we all take for granted. So I say do these. They are kind of scary, but I say get out there and do them. We've got about 6 minutes. Are there other questions?
My name is Michelle Wilker. I'm from Cooper Farms. What's your follow-up process after these tours? How do you follow up with the bloggers and the dietitians and the chefs? Is there a process you guys go through after each tour?
So we, like Jancey said, we create a Facebook secret group after each tour where we say, what questions do you have? And we keep in touch that way. Otherwise, we just, and you can speak to this, Abby, after that tour, like Jancey said, being together for 3 days, they feel like I can contact them and ask them any question. So they honestly follow up with us. And then the continuing education piece, so we reach out to them and say, hey, we're doing Farm Food Tour 2, do you want to go? We're creating this other event. So it's really kind of natural that it just continues. I don't think we put a lot of extra work into it, do we, Jancey? No, it just seems really natural because you've spent so much time with them that they trust you and you trust them, and it just continues.
Well, and I think also, I mean, just in our world of social media, it's just very easy to keep in touch. I think I'm friends with everyone who went on the first one on Facebook and follow their other social media channels, and have had some amount of correspondence with each one of them since, and and truly interested in what they're doing with their lives, and with seeing some of the things that they're going forward with after being on the tour too.
As a non-farmer, I would say that I don't feel so far removed from producers anymore. I mean, I have two right here that know me really well and can ask about my kids. So that's another really big thing, is you don't feel like you're so far removed as much as you were at the beginning.
Before.
We try and send a follow-up email. Sometimes that's like super intense and has all the links and information just based on what questions they have since the tour. But frankly, yeah, it's that Facebook group. It's just staying connected. Abby, don't think this the wrong way, but I try and make a point of connecting back with all of my people, right? Like I said, you become friends with these people, and I genuinely care. Like, Abby's daughter got to go to the White House because she created this recipe thing, and it was the coolest thing in the world, and I was so jealous and living vicariously through that. And so you just become genuinely interested in these people and your friends, and you just stay connected. So that's the big thing. I jokingly tell people I will never want somebody on my bus. And I call it my bus, I know. One time I got left because I wasn't really good friends with the driver, so now I make a point to be besties with the drivers. It was in Chicago. It was great fun. So I don't want anybody on my bus that isn't willing, especially from the farmer and the staff perspective. My job as a staff person is to be that resource for these people, so for the dietitians, for the bloggers, because these guys got a farm. Like, they're doing planting things and taking care of livestock. And so my kind of role is to be that first connection. If those farmers are busy, come with those questions. I love connecting these guys to the farmers, and that's kind of the role I serve. And I don't want somebody on the bus that's not willing to become friends with everybody, right? You want people that want to have conversations and engage, and that's critical for this.
Other questions? So to wrap it up, we've got 3 minutes. Maybe have each of you talk about how attending the tour, like, was there anything that you changed after participating in the tour?
I would say that for me, I was probably one of those that it took me a while to not be defensive, because we're doing what we think's the best we can do on our farm, and and none of these people that I've come up against that have been on these tours have been intimidating or questioning my practices, only because they want to know, but not telling me that I was doing something wrong. But for so long, it's just so hard to just not be on the defensive all the time and just, I'm not doing anything wrong. But just to really realize that how many people are really touched by what we do every day, and how much more it is important to tell our story. I think that's probably we hear it all the time, tell your story, and it almost gets a little old sometimes, but it still is so relevant and so true, and probably even more important today than it ever has been.
You don't think it's working? Can you guys hear me in the back? Okay. I would say as a dietitian, the one thing that was great for me was I was able to describe the antibiotic use, the hormone use, so much better to my clients, because they do constantly have those questions and concerns, and do as much now as they did 5 years ago. It's still there. As a mom, I think what's interesting, so I always bought organic milk for my kids, not because I thought organic is, nutritionally superior. I think it was a guilt factor. I could afford to buy organic, so I just thought, I should do the best for my kids. I've switched back to regular now because I don't feel guilty anymore. And I think that was a nice thing, just to get rid of that fear of how our food is produced, seeing the dairy farmers and listening to them. I mean, they're doing a great job, and I don't have any fear anymore of how the cows are being treated and things like that. So personally, I've changed some of my consumer habits, and I think that's important because I'm sure it relays into how I teach clients and how my educations go.
So we're out of time. So I'm going to have to cut it off because I know we have to flip the room around. But LaVell we'll all stick around. So if anybody has any questions, follow up with us, and we'll be here. Thank you for your attention.